There are certain basic desires in everyone which strive for self-expression. If they remain unexpressed, the individual becomes frustrated, for his life force is strangled back. It is here suggested that these desires, whether they be a desire for better health, more confidence, more friends, success in some undertaking, or the ability to help others, should be expressed and made articulate in the form of suggestions. Throughout the ages, people have striven in various ways to express their inner needs. They have wished, hoped, prayed, and used self-suggestion, and the more simply and sincerely they have been able to do so, the more successfully have their wishes come to fruition. Registering suggestions in the unconscious mind actually requires very little effort if the preparatory work on relaxation has been done and what you are going to suggest has been previously decided. Having isolated yourself from the outside world and directed the attention inwards, allow yourself to mentally drift away from the world of sight and sound into an inner world. In a dreamy, detached fashion, carry out the trance induction routine of counting and noting the heaviness of the body and other sensations of detachment. This should go on automatically. There is a complete submission to the sensation of drifting and to the effortlessly repeating silently to oneself, I am sinking down further, further, or whatever formula you are using. Surrender to this experience. Reason is stilled and becomes a silent spectator to this feeling and experience of floating detachment. Gradually, this sensation of sinking will come to a point where it seems to stop and one remains stationary, poised, as it were, vaguely aware, but with nothing happening. This is just as it should be, the will, present but not being exercised. Rather like a shepherd who, effortlessly resting on the hillside, sees all the movements of his flock and his awareness is in the role of a passive witness. This is approaching the borderland, separating the conscious from the unconscious mind. To go beyond this point means that control would be lost. This is the point when suggestions will be registered in the unconscious mind. This is achieved by letting your suggestions float through your mind. Exercises in the course to create this state can be likened to the tilling of the ground and the act of registering self-suggestions to the planting of seeds. If the ground is being well tilled, if the relaxation exercises are being carried out, and the formulation or reflection on suggestions also carried out, the registering of the desired instructions upon the unconscious mind will not be difficult. It is essentially that no effort is exerted when making self-suggestions. If the judgment begins analyzing what is occurring, the process of registering ideas in the unconscious mind is immediately brought to a standstill. It is as though, after planting seeds, the gardener were to dig up the tiny, fragile seedlings to see how they are growing. The result would probably be to destroy the plants before they had time to establish themselves. It is the absence of any intellectual interference which enables suggestions to take root in the unconscious mind. The success of suggestion is dependent on bypassing the conscious mind and registering the desired impression directly on the unconscious mind. If we are sufficiently absorbed in anything, we forget everything else and become completely immersed in it. No effort is necessary to give attention to an interesting book, a TV or radio program. It holds our whole attention. Many people feel that they cannot give the same suggestion so that they cannot give the same sustained attention to carrying out exercises on relaxation, trance induction, and self-suggestions as they would to an interesting book or film. Concentration is largely a matter of interest, but what would the man who feels he cannot concentrate reply if he were asked, "Are you interested in feeling physically and mentally fit? Are you interested in leaving all your troubles and difficulties behind you?" Not only will he be interested, but as soon as he can see a practical way of achieving fitness and freedom from worry, he will do all he can to attain them. Waking suggestions are carried out by repetition and can be made to oneself at any time. It does not matter where you are, standing, walking, or sitting. Once a technique is grasped, it is no longer necessary to isolate oneself. In the beginning, it is necessary to have the most favorable conditions, but later, all this is unnecessary. Many people who have mastered self-suggestion never go into a trance to register suggestions in their minds. All they do is close their eyes and register the desired suggestion. It would have value if the student pauses at the end of this paragraph and says to himself, and means it, "I'm going to learn how to get more control over my mind. I'm going to do this." It is a good practice to carry out waking suggestions regularly by setting a fixed time for making them to oneself. For example, every lunchtime, set aside a few minutes. Similarly, use a cue or reminder, some happening, such as when the electric light goes on or when you glance at your watch, and at each of these times, give yourself a few waking suggestions. All that is necessary is to close your eyes and count 3 and impress the suggestion on your mind. Open your eyes and carry on with whatever you are doing. The more often you do this, the more effectively your suggestions will be registered. Some people repeat waking suggestions to themselves over and over again as they lie in bed before going to sleep. One method of self-suggestion is to write down suggestions on a piece of paper, and last thing at night, read it 10 times. Then place the paper under the pillow and sleep on it. Or another, to write out suggestions for the day and carry them around in one's pocket. It is a good idea to write out the week's suggestions in one's diary. It is also a useful device to write out suggestions in the form of a letter and post it to oneself, and when receiving it, to read and reread several times. Implanting suggestions in the mind is like planting seeds in a garden. Just as it is necessary to keep a garden clear of weeds, it is in a similar fashion necessary to keep the mind clear of negative thoughts. Do not always repress doubts. Try to trace what has caused them, to see if they arise from some matter which requires your attention. Before turning to the next section, let us pause to review the method employed in this course. It is not advocated that you should relax and repeat the same suggestions every day. Once the method is grasped, you will find it becomes interwoven into all your thinking, wishing, and planning. This does not mean you will be daydreaming or suggesting to yourself all day, but it does mean a new kind of informed awareness in thinking about yourself, your plans, and in observing yourself and other people. And instead of chance or negative reactions, you will find you have positive reactions, which are the result of your following a program. The program is as follows: planning, the suggestible state, creation of, registering suggestions in unconscious mind, self-observation, replanning suggestions. Some of these different phases, though described separately, are performed simultaneously. They are not as easy in separate in practice. They are not as easy to separate in practice as they are in theory. For example, the deepening of the trance state and the self-administration of suggestions are sometimes carried out at the same time. Also, self-observation and the replanning of suggestions will often be more or less part of the same act. The system of self-suggestion is a program in which positive thoughts are guided and monitored towards making definite changes in one's life, instead of drifting or letting chance or the past determine what happens. The whole cycle is ceaselessly repeated. Planning, suggestion sessions, self-observation, amending of or adding to suggestions.